It's your co-host Yogi Rich, introducing the sixth episode of OneAnswer Yoga. What is government's nature? I chose this topic because I find myself in a place that acts a lot different than it says it's supposed to. The life that we live, this American dream, turned out a little bit different for this generation than we thought it would. So, interestingly, yoga has a lot of different topics and points of view that help deal with this complex world that we find ourselves in. This conversation covers a wide range of topics, from the nature of the state to how the individual impacts the whole. We offer little tools and tips and tricks for each individual that can practice to help be a more productive member of this precious little world we have. We only have a short time on this planet. Why waste it arguing with each other? Now, without further ado, please enjoy this sixth episode.
Hi.
Hey there.
I realized we just said we were going to jump in and record, and then I remembered that I actually had a candy in my mouth because my voice has been a little weird. So, forgive me, we're recording and I have a candy in my mouth.
Hey, it's all good. It's just evidence of how well you can multitask.
Please. So, if you're one of those people who can't stand the sound of someone sucking on a candy, I apologize. Please forgive me. I will eat the candy fast enough, but
It's all good. I'm sure people will prefer what you have to say. Yeah.
we hope so. But there's people who literally like the sound of different things
Yeah.
drives them a little crazy.
Yeah.
There's like this meme on Instagram or something like that where they say like things that when people do it, it drives you crazy, but when dogs do it, it's really endearing. One of them was like chewing
Absolutely.
with your mouth open.
Yeah. Panting. Yeah, if the person was next to you on the bus, you'd be like, bruh.
Snoring, farting, all of those things, the dogs, it's so cute. Like, I think it's so cute when Henson burps. He does a big, like, I call it his frat boy burp. It's so cute. But if it did, like somebody else did it, I'd be like, God,
Yeah, get out of
come
here.
on. Gross.
What's going on with like you? Do you want to like share a little bit about that? Like,
Mm.
so right now, what are you treating as like a throat lozenge?
I actually have these like candies that we used to sell at the center in New York, and they're candy. I really love candy.
Yeah.
I've always been kind of a candy fan. I'm one of those people who, even though sugar is not great for you, I tolerate it really, really, really well.
You
So,
sound like an addict.
so I got these candies.
So
So I got these candies that are like supposed to have like good stuff in them, like elderflower or vitamin C, or like things that are supposed to be good for you while you're eating your candy. But one of the things that so I've developed like these different health issues connected to 9/11. And so one of them is this they call it irritable larynx syndrome or something. So sometimes my voice is fine. Like right now, this morning, it actually sounds really clear. Like yesterday, I was like, I'm glad we're not recording today because we would have had to cancel and do something else because I had no voice yesterday. It was so scratchy. So yeah, so I'm eating one of these like healthy candies, although Jolly Ranchers work well too.
just good old fashioned Jolly Ranchers. Just
So a funny thing, like Jolly Ranchers, I grew up in Denver, Colorado. And the Jolly Rancher, the original Jolly Rancher candy factory, was just down the road from where I grew up. And so growing up, my grandfather would take us all and throw us in the back of a pickup truck, because obviously back then it was totally acceptable to throw kids in the back of a pickup truck and drive them around. And so all my siblings and the cousins and everybody would jump in the back of the pickup truck, and he'd take us over to the Jolly Rancher candy factory and buy us Jolly Ranchers. And then when we moved out to Connecticut and then Virginia, every time they'd send us like Christmas gifts or packages or they'd come visit, they'd always bring big bags of Jolly Ranchers. So for my family, it's not just even like a candy. It's like childhood. It's like one of those things that like evoke
Mhm.
something in
Yeah.
all of us.
Yeah.
And they used to have such good flavors. Like there were so many flavors of Jolly Ranchers. Now they've kind of like narrowed it down to just a few. And oh, let me turn my notifications off here. But yeah, now there's only a couple different flavors of Jolly Ranchers.
Yeah, that's dope how like certain candies and like for me it's chocolate chip cookies. Like
Mm,
I'm a chocolate person. Me and my mom we used to love to eat chocolate chip cookies like
mm.
and I'm trying to narrow it down. I guess you'd say it's like okay, now I'm trying to like narrow down like the windows in which it's acceptable for me to eat chocolate chip cookies. I used to think I handled it well, but I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or what. I don't know what it is, but now it's like my back hurts, my leg will hurt. Like I was like, damn, what am I doing?
I
But
think we were also talking about last time, Quentin, also like if you remember me growing up, I wasn't allowed to eat a lot of sugar.
yeah,
So I
ooh,
also think like the Jolly Ranchers to us was like,
ooh,
it wasn't something we got every day, but when we did get it, it was like sugar rush, right? So as kids, we were probably like, this is like baby crack.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it's crack. Yeah, actually, yeah, full throated. Yeah, they put sugar in everything. Um, but I was thinking about a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
I actually
What
had
you
a
got for
long
us today?
conversation with my homie yesterday, and um, I don't know, a couple of thoughts came up, and I wanted to like see what you thought about them.
Yeah, let's jump in.
All right, all right, cool. So, um, I was kind of like sharing with him a little bit of the context of the podcast, just and just how the couple episodes have been, and sort of about war or just conflict or protesting, action stuff like that, and um, one of the main things that he brought up that I thought was kind of interesting was capitalism, or you could say like our society, like in context to war. So like the capitalist arm, it's like a form of predation. So it's like he was trying to say like, is it a way that humans can consume other humans other than eating them, like a form of cannibalism?
Ooh, interesting.
Um, yeah. I don't even remember what I said to that in the moment, but I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. One other thing I'd like to add was, I had like a crazy night of sleep. Like I fell asleep at like we had a long conversation for like 5 hours. I walked the
Mm.
dogs, ate, and then I fell asleep at like 6:30. Then I woke up at like 11:30 at night. So then I was up till like 4, and I was just kind of like thinking and just like what am I gonna do like to kill some time. And I finally listened to The Anatomy of State by Murray Rothbard. I don't know if you've ever heard it before.
I have not heard it. I'm gonna write it down though. I'll check it out.
It was pretty cool. A lot of it was what we were talking about, but it specifically used the word predation over and over and over again. And in that particular book, it emphasizes the start of the state and how it's sort of like you know if you're able to maintain a monopoly and force in your particular area for a long enough time, that's considered a state. So the capacity, and then from that point, states will either expand or they'll be conquered. And usually, the way that a state will change will be either a warring state or a revolution within the state. But typically, it happened through conflict. And Murray Rothbard specifically was like kind of focusing on like Western civilization. He speaks English. I think he's an American. So, anyways, that coupled with like the capitalism, we were kind of talking about different aspects of war as like, and even protests, like the morality behind it. Maybe some people are like doing it for their own benefit, but I want to like think about more of greed's role,
Mm.
and what role, like maybe on an individual level, like what we could do to be less greedy, but then also like reflect on how that manifests as like consumption of others, um,
Mm-hmm.
And then a little bit in there, I'm like, the word that just popped to my mind is like lust is like this too. Um, Sort of like a form of like consuming others or wanting to consume others in some way. So I don't know. I just had a couple thoughts. What do you think?
I think it's so much like is like the outward is a reflection of the inward. And so when we look at like these different states, right, that are created or governments or way of being, it's really like a reflection of our own minds. I mean, it's just like our own mind warring inside, right, trying to make sense of things, trying to create structures, trying to create rules. And then that gets sort of transferred over into how we operate out in the world.
Mm.
And so for me, it's really, again, it comes back to like our own minds and how our minds are operating. And when we sort of work on cleaning up our own minds and our own awareness, then it spills over into the way we interact out in the world. So, yeah, it's not
Cleaning your
surprising
mind
to
and
have like
cleaning your
really
awareness.
restless
I was gonna
mind.
say, what is cleaning your mind and cleaning your awareness? And how do you define mind and awareness?
So, okay. Hold on. I'm going to pause this recording just for a second because I want to pull something up. Okay, we found what we were looking for. I thought that it was actually going to be one of the sutras I was going to read, but it's actually in the commentary of the sutras where it's talking about the different parts of the mind. So you've got like chittam, which is the sum total of the mind. And then we've got ahamkara, which is the I sense or the ego part of the mind. And then you've got the buddhi, which is the discriminative faculty. And then we have manas, which is sort of the desire, the part of the mind that gets attracted through all the senses. So I'm just going to read the example Swami Satchidananda gives because he usually explains things better than I would anyway. So he says, for example, say you're quietly sitting, enjoying the solitude when a nice smell comes from the kitchen. The moment the manas records, I'm getting a fine smell from somewhere. The buddhi discriminates. What is that smell? I think it's cheese. How nice. What kind? Swiss. Yes, it's Swiss cheese. Then once the buddhi decides, yes, it's a nice piece of Swiss cheese, like you enjoyed in Switzerland last year, the ahamkara says, oh, is it so? Then I should have some now. These things happen one at a time, but so quickly that we seldom distinguish between them. So we have like these different parts of the mind, right? I think we think of the mind as like this homogenous thing where it's just like one part of the mind. But in the Yoga Sutras, they actually start separating out the different functions of the mind and say that they're not all the same. It's not all homogenous. So sometimes these things can feel like warring parts of the mind, right? Like, the buddhi might be telling you one thing, the manas is telling you something else. Like the buddhi might be discriminating and saying, no, we really shouldn't eat those Jolly Ranchers. They're going to make us feel bad. And the manas is like, oh, heck no. And then the ahamkara is like, well, I can eat them if I want to because that's my right is to eat them. And so it's kind of like, again, the outward reflection of how we look at this. When we're looking at like governments and land and what we own, it's like we try to create these governments that are almost like the reflection of what we have happening in our minds. And so it's almost like governments are like this giant form of ahamkara, like the ego of like, I, me, mine, this is my stuff, this is my country, this is my rights. And then we try to have like these discriminatory parts, which are like, oh, but we should look at this and analyze it and make sure that it's all working accordingly and all that. But then we also have the manas, which is a little bit just like the senses, like responding and just being like, oh, but this place is so good, or this is wonderful, or we should have this, or we should do this, and like all over the place. So I think when we're talking about like, I like to think of it as cleaning the mind. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but for me, like cleaning up the mind and making sure that the mind is like all, either, like I said, ignoring the chatter or calming the chatter down. And then we were talking last time about like breath and how powerful breath can be for calming the chatter down. And then also concentration. Concentration is so important. I was reading in my reading this morning about two other parts, which I think are interesting because you were talking about aparigraha or greed and this idea of like, aparigraha to me is like a very ahamkara idea, like this ego based idea of like, I see that, I want it, it's going to make me happy, right? Greed, at the source of most of the greed, Swami Satchidananda would say, is like this idea of happiness outside of ourselves. And so I was reading a little bit about Saucha, and Saucha is this idea of contentment. And contentment is this awareness that nothing outside of you can make you happy.
Saucha or Santosha? Saucha or Santosha?
Oh, I think Santosha,
Santosha,
right?
yeah.
The sense that like nothing outside of yourself can make you happy at all. Like it all has to come from inside you.
Mm.
And so once you have this idea of like, there is nothing outside of you, right? There's only the inside awareness. Then it's kind of the same idea of like contentment within yourself, of just being like happy no matter what's going on, no matter and that's like a tricky thing also, because I feel like people want to look outside themselves for all of this enjoyment or feeling, or you know, we think like if we buy this thing, it will give me this moment of happiness. If we possess something, it'll give us a moment of happiness. If we you know, and then we think when people are like trampling on our rights, that is taking away our happiness. But like these things can also coexist. Like you can be content and be passionate, if that makes sense. But it has to do with like letting go of the attachment of the result of it. And so I think with governments, the one thing that I feel like goes sideways is that there's this idea that we have to possess and own in order to feel fulfilled in our government. So like we have to have our own rules and our own ways of doing stuff. And when you have possession and greed, there's no room for anything else. So there's no room for other viewpoints, other ways of thinking. We get this very like panicky feeling about land, like land is limited. And if we don't protect the land that we own, then we will have nothing. And so I think those are really complicated ideas that stem out of us constantly thinking like our fulfillment and our contentment is going to come from outside of us. That's just some initial things that were.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, there's a thread there that I want to pull and
Yeah.
also ask you know, another question. So we talked about cleaning the mind. So a clean mind, if you apply clean mind to the three parts of the mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So clean intellect, clean manas, you know, clean desiring, clean ego sense. Now we're using the word clean, but at the same time, like maybe a synonym could be like still or a calm mind.
Yeah.
So I wonder, like, okay, so imagine you're meditating, right? You're person listening to this, you're gonna start meditating. It's like, how you get out of meditation, what are some evidence, what is evidence that your mind is clean or / calm? And so like, let's say for example, you know, you get out of meditation, now you like walk out your front door and now you're walking a city
Mm-hmm.
street or whatever. Now you're living life. Like how do you know? I add a clarifying question. So like one of my friends asked me a long time ago, one of my best homies, right when I first got into yoga, he was like, so how do you know when you're meditating? And really what he meant was like not only just in the moment, which was kind of easier to answer. He's like, how do you know that like the effect of that meditation is influencing your mind and cleaning it?
Yeah. I think that's when, like, you know, I mean, the second sutra, right, is yoga chitta vritti nirodha, like restraint of the mental modifications is yoga. And so I think when you have like mental modifications in here, it's sort of thoughts, but it's not just thoughts because it's other things happening in your mind. So I think the real evidence is, again, and this is where I think so many people, when they do yoga, they get a little bit stuck, is this idea that like you find some sort of peace, quote unquote, on the mat or on the cushion in the case of meditation. But then when you get up, and you wander around. This is why pratyahara, like withdrawal of the senses, is so important too, because you can get up and all of a sudden everything that you thought you had achieved goes out the window when you step outside, and all of a sudden you smell delicious baked bread, and any restraint you thought you had over your mind is gone. You're like, I need to eat that bread.
Dang it.
Yeah. So I think like the sign of quote unquote a clean mind or a calm mind is that you, and I'll tell you why I like clean in a second, why I use that terminology rather than calm. The is like being able to go through your day, go through your life and have it not be rippled, right? There's no ripples in the mind. It's just like this calm surface where nothing is disturbing it. And that can be how you interact with your friends. Your friend says something that gets you all spicy and worked up and you don't react to it. You're just like, oh, or you just have a witnessing, right? Of like, oh, that's interesting. I got a little worked up about that, didn't I? Suddenly got all spicy about it. So I think that's like how you can start to see also like that your meditation's having an effect, because there's too many people who spend hours and hours meditating or concentrating on the mat and then get up and it all goes out the window. And it's sort of like, it's similar to me, like in the Christian faith, when people go to church on Sunday and are all like, yeah, we're good and Jesus and all this. And then they walk out the door and all of a sudden it all goes out the window. And it's probably true of like most religions, but I don't think we talk about it enough in yoga. I think people can get really, I guess maybe it is true in religions too, but I think yoga also, in the yoga world, people get really self-righteous. Like they think like they're good people because they do yoga, which is funny because I'm like, that really has nothing to do with it. It just means that you need more work on your mind.
I'm like, yeah, it's like, if anything, like, yeah, if you really knew, it's like, yeah, we're the ones that are the most, Yeah.
And so like when people are meditating a lot and spending a lot of hours in meditation, I'm like, I'm not really sure that's a great sign of like your involvement, right? If you have to sit in meditation for hours just to be able to function and be like a decent human throughout the day, or, meditation can be very, it's very almost like addictive.
Yes,
and people can get a little addicted to that feeling because it feels so good, right? And so then instead of getting up and engaging in the world and maintaining a calm mind, they just want to lock themselves away and sit in a room or a cave, or as it used to be in India, and just be in that state. And then it really speaks to like, where's this level of selfishness in your progress in your path? Because there is a certain amount of selfishness that I think you have to have in order to inspire yourself. Like you almost have to work along with your ego in order to make your ego want to do this sort of stuff. But at some point you also have to be like, okay, and I've got to keep that under control. So there's a selfishness that happens with people who meditate a lot, where they become like obsessed with their meditation and everything else falls away. But I'm like, and then they become really like proud of themselves, and they get like this ego about their meditation. Like, oh, I'm such a great meditator. I meditate all the time. When really it's like, I'm not really sure you should be going around advertising that. Because to me, that means like you can't function out in the world and maintain your peace. You have to sit on a mat for 3 hours a day. Again, I'm not talking about people who are just starting. I think when you just start, like meditate as much as you want, because really it does feel great. And again, if you're going to have a vice, that's a pretty great one to have, right? If you're going to have an attachment or you're going to do something obsessively, like, okay, obsessively meditate. But I do think you get to be aware also of like, meditation can be a crutch just like anything else, and you can get stuck in it, as opposed to realizing that the whole purpose of meditation is to attain enlightenment and realization, so that you then can move in the world and be really peaceful and calm. So I was going to talk about clean mind. So why do I like clean mind? Because for me, it's just an imagery that I really like, of this idea of almost like scrubbing all the negativity out of my mind. So I use mantra a lot for that, because I feel like mantra, the actual sound vibrations of the mantra, they've shown can actually have an effect on, thoughts are not concrete things. Thoughts are electrical impulses. We can create new grooves in our brain if we repeat thoughts. That's why positive affirmations can be so powerful. The mind doesn't necessarily need to know whether it's quote unquote true or not. It just has to repeat something over and over. So I feel like mantra is a really powerful way to take a lot of to create a different chemistry or a different electrical system in your brain, so that your brain starts to go down a different path. Like those grooves or pathways in your brain, you can retrain those. So I just like the idea of a clean mind, because for me, it's like I like to think of the mantra as like a little scrub brush, scrubbing all the negativity, especially if I wake up one day and I'm depressed or negative or irritable, or, my mind's just really funky to be in. Then I like to think of that mantra as just coming in, scrubbing it up, polishing it up a little, making it all clean again. And that's what it feels like to me. It feels like it's all clean and fresh, but I don't really think that's a thing. That's just the way I like to think about it. So
Okay. All right. I like that. So, okay. So I'm gonna put this in the front so you can think about it a little. So before we were talking about how the state is the exterior expression of
mhm.
of the ego sense in the mind, or so let's think about how that correlates to the internal self, because you said something there where a clean mind is positive, maybe. That could be a way to think of it. You're trying to get rid of negative thoughts. I thought that was interesting. In the sutras, it's advised that one of the main tools that we have is when you have negative thoughts to think of opposite positive ones. And then later on, it also mentions mantra and how that also does the same thing. The interesting thing about mantra is it's sort of like our mind automatically mantras in response to most situations. So
Likes to repeat things over and over and
like
over again.
repeat things
It
over
likes
and over again.
repetition.
Yeah, it likes repetition, and as a way to respond automatically. So it's like our mind already has that tendency to do it. So really up front, that maybe several hours of meditation, when you're getting into the practice, and we're saying years here, if of maybe meditating as often as you can to
Hmm.
train your mind, so that when you might start to notice that when certain situations pop up, that positive thoughts, however you might define them, would
Hmm.
automatically surface. So let's say let me play with this a little bit. Like some things that came to mind were okay, so the negative thoughts are gone. What is a non-negative ego? What is a non, or what's a positive ego? What's a positive desire? What's a positive intellect? And how I like to think of it, or how I like to play with it, is I'll start with the desire. Is it beneficial to others? Am I doing this because it brings joy to others? And what you realize is it sounds corny, but you were talking about contentment. That's really the source of contentment. When you serve others, that allows you. I would say you can be content and just lay down all day, but I think that contentment wears off in a while. I think that real contentment, that consistent contentment, comes from doing things that you feel like are beneficial for others, that you feel like are selfless, that you feel like are for the greater good of others. So that might be a way to be able to tell, okay, in this previous experience, I might have closed down and sheltered and maybe not been open-hearted, or not would have done something selfish.
Yeah.
Now I'm more inclined to do things that are selfless. That might be an example. Maybe then with the intellect, it's the intellect is deducing ways to make the positive action happen. So instead of the intellect going, oh, that selfless desire that you have, you can't afford that. You don't have time for that. You don't have the gas money for that. What has that person done for you? Your intellect, might have been trained to think like that, but
Yeah.
then through this practice, it reverts. And in the ego sense, similarly, it's it stops going from you say a negative ego expression would be like, this is mine, I want it all. Like, this is mine, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. And maybe like the opposite might be true, where it's like, I'm just here, these things are around me, but I'm not attached to them. They like, we enjoy each other's company. When they want to leave or when things go, they go. And so then, like, just kind of playing with that, how does that translate in society? So it's like, how are those negative belief patterns on mass manifest on society? What are some signs of that? And then what are some signs of, like, what are some signs that you might be able to look to and be like, okay, that's proof that peace of mind is more prominent in that state or in that society, versus a place where what are some signs that or unclean minds run that state? Because I think that's what a lot of us want to understand, because we're kind of told that, like, we're supposed to do this, and we do think they don't bring us clean minds. Essentially, they don't deliver that promise of freedom.
Right.
And yeah, so
I think it's interesting. You were talking about this idea of right action, right? Of this, it does harm to no one and good to someone. And imagine if all the governments, that was the way they made choices about what they were going to do, like how they were going to operate. I mean, I think it would probably be a much different world if that was the guiding light for the choices they made. Like, if every single time they went in to make a decision, or every time, that was the basis on which the conversation started. Even if it couldn't be done perfectly, even if that was the first question that's asked, right? And maybe to some extent, there is some version of that, but I don't know that it gets played out the way that I would love to see it be played out at that level. But then I think, like, just like your mind, like, imagine if your mind is calmer, or your mind is cleaner, or you're able to operate in the world, you're going to see more contentment, right? That santosha is going to be present in your own life. And so I also wonder if there was a study done, which somebody's probably done this study, I just don't know what it is, as they look at, like, they love to figure out what are the happiest countries. And I think it'd be interesting to look at the government and the way that the government operates and the questions they ask when they're decision making, and seeing if anybody knows about a study like this or has done any from, looked up this kind of study. It'd be interesting to see the way the government operates, not just like on the rules it makes or something like that. Oh, Henson has something to say. He's very...
he deserves his time.
He's like, I've got something to say about this. Hey, Henson. Woohoo. Come here. It's okay. Yeah. It would be interesting to see, like, how the way the government makes the decisions that it makes, and how that directly relates to what's going on. I'm gonna let you talk while I calm Henson down. Sorry, I just hit the wrong button. Hold on.
Cool. So I think what we mentioned before, but another, like, important concept here is surrender to divine will, or another way to look at that would just be like cooperation with everything, and thinking from that point of view where it's like, okay, I'm a part of a whole. This place is a part of a whole. It actually would be much worse if everything was like me. It wouldn't be an ecosystem. It wouldn't be supportive of life. So if we're all in this together, on an individual basis and on a state basis, you could think like that. Like, not only how does this not only benefit the relations between these few tribes, from tribes to large nations, how do these things benefit each other, but only, like, how do these things benefit all other nations? And even if you can't entirely grasp that, that's aiming for the stars, right? And that's going, okay, well, and then from that, that's going, okay, well, as long as we can honestly say that we put our best foot forward. Like any action that subverts that is cleaner and clearer. And that's kind of the interesting thing about mantra too. And this negative thing is like when you're mantraing or when you're trying to think of one particular thing, all the any other thought becomes much more obvious as unwarranted or or whatever the word is. So there's that aspect too where it's like, okay, if the state is meant to exemplify this, then all the other actions that are not in alignment with that, like we know that that's fluff, that's extra, that's non-necessary. And kind of bringing it back home, it's like, a lot of us, I got the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, right? You could look at that as sort of like the mantra, right? From a nation's point of view, that's the mantra, plus the national anthem and other things that you might hear every now and then. But that's what everybody swears on, right? And in that mantra, it doesn't say anything about like perpetual war fighting for interest in the state's interest or, the state affiliated folks' interest. So, and I think that's what we can see that on the internal level, right? Like we engage in this conflict internally because we think it's beneficial for us, right? We argue internally because we've been either taught to or whatever, like these things happen, right? For whatever reason. But we have that internal tension as a part of our comfort zone. And then I think that it manifests exteriorly where, we have all this exterior tension, but it's also like, well, this is how the world is. Like these things are just inevitable. And what I found so interesting about just practicing yoga in my own personal life is like how many of those societal structures that seemed like inevitable and immovable things that seem like all these like laws of success that seem to apply, like they no longer seem to apply when emphasizing having a positive mind over having a positive return on investment or having a positive materialistic gain. It just seems so clear. It was like, oh, this is the return on investment thinking this way with emphasizing ease in the mind and navigating from that way versus emphasizing tension and then trying to work towards my goals seemed ridiculous. So, but it does seem like that's kind of flipped now where our internal politics are extremely tense in order for folks to gain power, at least during my lifetime. Foreign policy is extremely like tense with many different places. All the while knowing internal as an internal person and on the scale of the state that like there's selfish interests at play. When you wake up in the morning, you're like, I want to do this. You want to have a golden expectation for your day, but in your own life that you don't meet those expectations. But however, if a larger entity claims what they want to do, and then you don't give them that same space of flexibility as it's true for yourself. So I kind of so anyway, so I was just that's some things that came up. Maybe Henson's said his piece, but anything you want to add to that?
I love this idea that you were saying about like this mantra, right? Like the Constitution or even the anthem.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that always cracks me up is I don't know if you've ever seen like those commentaries of like how foreign countries are always like amazed by how much we play the anthem.
Yeah.
We play the anthem all the time. Like
Yeah.
a little league game. We're going to play the national anthem, right?
Yeah.
Every time we gather, like we're trying to play this national anthem, and that is not the way other countries are, which I think is really interesting, that they don't choose to engage with the national anthem in that same way. He's sorry, guys. He's just like he's D isn't here today, so I'm alone. So he is very, very he thinks every single noise is something he's got to alert me to. It's okay. Why don't you lay down? You could lay down.
That's it. Okay, so wow, that just made me think of something too, because the mantra is important. I remember Swami Sachinanda writing in something about like, even that Himalayan monk that we were referencing earlier, if you play war drums around them, like they're more inclined to march. There's sound has this power. These vibrations have this power. Um, if you'll notice specifically in the States, like I really don't hear the national anthem because I don't watch sports. But if you attend any sports event, any conflict based activity or competitive based like activity, you'll hear the anthem played. But if you're going into work to build something, if you're doing something collaborative with folks, you're not hearing that. So even that is a hint in the direction of like the state's function. You're making me think of way back when, like Black Lives Matter, early days when folks were kneeling, the very very beginning of folks kneeling at the national anthem or like at the flag or however it was phrased. What was really interesting to me about that time period and the thoughts that I had was a lot of people got angry because they thought it was insulting to the military. And I remember thinking how strange that was, that the American flag to some people represented our military. Even though I lived in Stafford, which, and my parents lived in DC, I was like, well, how does the American flag represent the military? Like, I see the American flag in school. We see the American flag in my house and in our neighborhood. Like, we don't associate. I did not associate until that statement was said. And like, I was really angry. I was like, I never even associated the two. And I think that that's kind of the thing where, like, in the government's point of view, they view themselves as this militant force. Is very clear, but like to the people, we're kind of like viewing them as what allegedly the Constitution says they are, which is something completely different, right? I'm thinking this represents something different than the folks that are in it and run it even think it means. So
And what a strange mantra. Like,
yeah,
I mean, what a strange repetition. Even I pledge allegiance to the flag, right, of the United States of America. That's a mantra. We have our children say that every single day in public schools, which is really he's so worked up. He doesn't like this conversation very much. He's been so quiet when we're recording, and all of a sudden today he's so worked up about everything.
Does he want to play?
No, I think there's somebody working outside. So he's trying to give them a heads up, like, don't come mess with my mom. You just stay there. I just want you to know I'm watching you. He's a little like a police state today, actually. I'm watching you.
I'm watching.
You better not come over here. This is my territory. It is actually funny because like animals, right, have this. So maybe that's also part of our inkling for territory is animals can be very territorial.
Yeah.
It's not just humans who are territorial. He's being incredibly territorial right now. He's saying, this is my house. This is my space. I don't want you coming in here. And I'm going to give you a heads up that you better not do it. And then if you come in here without my permission, I will attack you, right? Like dogs will attack you if you're not listening to their signals. And so there's also the interesting thing of like also just our default as animals of like why we react this way, but also then being like, but we have an intellect, right? That booty exists in us. So how do we use that intellect to then be like, but there's another possible scenario or another way? But anyway, yes, going back to the flag, we say our pledge allegiance to the flag. The flag represents the military. We do go to a lot of sporting events. Dee is a women's college basketball official. And he also officiates Major League Fishing tournaments. And our grandkids play softball. There's a lot of opportunities that we go to like these competitive events. And it's interesting that, like you pointed out, that it is at the competitive events that it's played so much, not as like, when people get around and start playing music together or jamming, they're not listening to the national anthem first. So it's like an interesting mantra, and it's not like the most peaceful mantra either, right? For people to be repeating. We're talking about like bombs bursting in air and like, wow, we really slayed those people, didn't we? It's not like yay us, even so much as like, yay, we conquered look how we conquered. And also, I really respect like why people chose to take a knee, because obviously also there's a lot of like, you know, racist overtones in the national anthem, and apparently other verses that we chose to take out
Of course.
were pretty crappy. And for the record, people do still take a knee
100%.
when the anthem is played. That is very much still a thing, and it's actually I tend to see it in women's basketball. We'll see it, men's basketball too, but we watch a lot of basketball, so that's definitely still a thing. And going back to this idea of like, if that's the okay, so here's another thought. I'm all over the place today. So it's a mantra, but weirdly, many people don't know the lyrics. I mean, isn't that like a famous thing in the US? Like, people go to sing the national anthem and then they forget the lyrics, or they mess up the lyrics, which is so like, what an abomination. Like, we will tear people up if you mess up the national anthem.
100%.
But when you go to a lot of these games, they actually don't play a version of the lyrics. They just play the music.
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually been finding like a lot of kids don't even know the lyrics because they never hear the lyrics at the games. They're just hearing the music. Which I'm not entirely opposed to, because again, it's pretty violent lyrics to be playing at the beginning of like a little league game, or even like a high school basketball game. I'm not really sure it sets the tone if you're talking about mantra and you know, trying to put positive thoughts into your brain. But also, it's interesting that they just play the music, so the young people don't even really. They're not even familiar with this anthem, which I have weird, as I'm talking about it, I have weird conflicting feelings about that. Like, I want them to know the lyrics, but at the same time, I'm not really sure it's like a great thing for us to keep repeating as a mantra. But I feel a little proud of it too. Like, I really love the national anthem.
I mean,
it's
I
really
feel like
beautiful.
I'm like, to me, I feel like it just doesn't need to be associated with anything outside of government action. Like, the school makes sense because it's, if you're in a public school, like, that's kind of the trickiest part. But if there is going to be a place, then it'll be that, or like maybe, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm actually
But it's like Pledge Allegiance, right?
No, but
Is
like,
it weird that we pledge allegiance to a flag in public school? Like, is that necessary? Do
no,
we have
it's
to
not.
pledge
It's
allegiance
not.
to a
It's
flag?
not. But we would also say, if we could. But I'm sure that that.
And yet, sorry,
Obviously,
the Pledge of Allegiance itself is a beautiful mantra. So I don't know that we should be pledging allegiance to this flag. I think it's also a little weird that we force our kids to repeat this thing. It feels a little, I don't know. It feels a little heavy-handed to me. But at the same time, it's a beautiful idea. Liberty and justice for all, right? Like, I like the fact that kids are going to school every day, and that is what they're repeating to themselves.
absolutely. Yeah.
I guess this is like part of the thing with life, though. Like, it's very complicated. Like, things are not very, I wish things were black and white. I wish they were like good or bad or cut and dry. Like, but it's so not. There's like nuance. And so sitting with the conflict, or the both and, or the, this feeling of like both of these things can exist in one place. I can love the Pledge of Allegiance and think maybe it's a little odd that we make our little children say it every morning when they get to school.
Well,
Um,
I'm gonna put it this way. It's like, we were talking about the power of the mantra, right? Where it's like, but if we do want to have a peaceful mind, like, we're not necessarily articulating that mantra's poor, or, like, like, getting back to the idea of like a state, and I like, we're using like a nation state because that's what we're using like as our example, but like, we can even think of like the county too, like, as a part of this, right? So on that well of like micro to macro, anywhere between like a little county town official to a national government. But like, it would be in their interest to have some sort of mantra that is truly positive. Like, at the same time, it's like, you know, and at the same time, like we do have that mantra, even the mantra that we did use, it still is a powerful mantra to measure our government's action against right now, or our own self action. Am I for liberty and justice for all? What
One nation under God,
and I
indivisible,
indivisible,
right?
and I think they
That
miss.
we are this united nation, that we are
Yeah,
all, we are not divisive, we are
we are not.
indivisible,
We are indivisible, and I think
with
that's a
liberty and
huge
justice for
element.
all.
And that's what makes it so strange for like the division to be normalized. It's like, no, this is not. But also, what the step forward then would be the entire world is indivisible. Like, and if that's the mantra, you know, with a couple of the words change, like what? How does that produce? What does that produce mentally? Okay, like how is killing people beneficial to the world? Then it becomes very blatantly clear when you have like when you have you separate from others. I'm getting a lot of spam calls recently. Um, you know,
Me
when you
too. I think it must be, yeah, I don't know if they
yeah,
changed the
it's
settings or
it's all
whether,
sorts of stuff. Like but like, you know, when as soon as you start to like other each other, and I think that's why it has to be associated with competitive sports, because it is a context in which you're making a game of kind of leading it all back to like beating one another. You're making a game of this. I'm not saying competition isn't fun or nothing like that. Like that's not. I think it is naturally fun. I think that that energy is hijacked for a purpose rather. And getting back to this idea of awareness too, because we're talking about okay, like awareness is essentially and very very key in all of this, because like we all like can see the same thing really, and our minds can respond based off of their you know the grooves that are already in the mind at the moment that that's happening. But the awareness is different. The awareness is like what we would say is like that constant that you're trying to just like the awareness is that capacity to see the mind, to experience what's going on in the mind, to be able to tell if it's clean or not in the first place. And so the first casualty we often see is like the awareness of the world. Let's like funnel all the children to identify with this one nation, glorify the nation, and then specify what that nation does, emphasize that nation, so that they have no other logical opinion to think that other than like you only know what you know, what you know, you're used to what you're used to, and have that
yeah.
point of view, and think that okay, since we've had it this way, others would also love to live this way because we, you know, we seemingly enjoy our lifestyles, which also justifies that like, which is kind of all a part of that cycle. I want to say one more thing too. So what was really dope about you said they just started playing just like the instrumental of the national anthem basically.
Mhm.
I often like wrestle with this concept of music and its role in society. And you know, like I love Bob Marley, for example. Like that's a very obvious one. But you know, in our tradition, in Eastern traditions primarily, or like yoga, it's like, and even in church too. But like consistent mantra, consistent like consistent awareness of the power of vibrations to impact the individual. And I think that like when you use the phrase clean awareness, the word that came to mind to me is more so like an alert awareness, or like it's like you're not like not looking. Your awareness is like you're in tune with paying attention to what's happening in your mental space. And that's kind of all that what we're talking about here is that like a lot of these things might sound kind of crazy from the outside. You're like, okay, so you're saying that singing the national anthem has like some impact on the mind, but it's like when you still the mind, you're much more aware of how certain things impact the mind when you're trying to practice that awareness.
And sound does have a effect on the mind. That's
Absolutely.
not even, that's not like Eastern woo woo.
Yeah.
That's not like just like science. They know that sound has an effect on us. And interestingly, music is one of the ways that music can make you feel something, right? There's a reason why we put on certain songs to evoke a mood, because music can have a huge impact on just the way you feel. And it can be the words, it can be the mantra or the sound, the word vibration, or it can be just the sounds of the music and the instruments that can actually evoke something in you. So it's interesting because, like with the national anthem, even if you take away the words, it still evokes a feeling in you, whether you know what the words are or not. Like the literal music evokes something, and then of course the meaning that we've given to it. But if you just maybe I wonder what a kid feels like when they first hear it. If they didn't hear the words, they just heard the anthem without some kind of
I mean, I can tell you what I thought.
musically, it's very instrumental, it's big, it's dramatic.
It's more so like, I feel like when you're a kid, like this is what I remember, especially like my first sporting event, because I was a martial artist at first. So my first several years of competing, we didn't do that. Not that I remember, we didn't do that in Taekwondo. But then when I started playing football, I was like 12. And I remember like, and I had been a couple sporting events, but like not many. But primarily it was like when I was at the football games, plus like going to other football games, and like being in the sports world a lot more often. To me, it was more so like, I thought the song was corny, like me personally. I was like, this is kind of a corny sound, but everybody seems to be really into it. It's almost like you want to fit in with the group. There's a huge element to that.
Yeah.
And then what ends up, because of, yeah, you're good. Because like the emphasis has so often been on competition, like we're saying, it's like you just that the programming. I think the music opens you up. Then you play this violent football game, or you're watching this violent thing, and then you're in the crowd. You see dads screaming at each other, and like it's like there's that tensity of the sport arena, and like that matches the game. I think that's a huge element of it. Then it just kind of gets baked in after a while, especially if you go to a lot of games. And then so even now it's like, oof, I'll get moved, but it's also, you're also listening to this in a space where everyone's getting moved, and there's that collective consciousness, that collective meditative energy that I think all of the major faiths like talk about, and how powerful that is.
I feel like taps is like that.
What's taps?
Taps, the music they play at military funerals.
Yep. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah.
This is like it again. It taps into something like. And I don't know if it's just because that was pre-programmed, or it's the nature. I mean, it's probably both. It's the nature of the chords. It's probably a little bit of the haunting of the melody, but also always being associated with this really poignant moment that probably is programmed into us long before we ever realize what's happening. So that now when you hear taps, it doesn't matter who you are, it will evoke this thing of this feeling. And there's a certain, like, again, poignant sadness to the sound of it that really is so powerful. I mean, I really love taps. It's a beautiful piece of music, but it's hard to hear without it evoking something really strong in you. And I wonder if maybe it's probably evokes some really negative connotations for a lot of people, because it is a very specific piece of music.
Okay, all right. So now you're making me think of a couple different things, because, all right, so we were getting to like. All right, so what we're saying really is that sound in and of itself, how it's power outside of, like, including, but also it's like a symbolic relationship between the music and the events that follow. It's like this sound induces this mental state, which will influence the body to act in this way. Then that gets reinforced because the mind observes that, and it kind of has this like pattern going on. But what I wanted to say that was kind of that I noticed, like, especially working with government officials all the time, is that you would think that they would listen to it every day. Like, if there is going to be a people that listen to the anthem or these certain things, it would be government officials, right? Every day in their spaces, like, and there's something.
They'd show up for work, and like the anthem would be played before they start work, or maybe they'd be saying the Pledge of Allegiance before they start work.
Yeah, listening to someone read the Constitution out loud during lunch for the first 30 minutes. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Through the sound system.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's so often all they're hearing over and over again is like, I need to get reelected, or I need to make more money, or I need to do this, instead of and that's why I feel like they're so confused. That's why they're so disconnected, because, a huge part of the population just is being told over and over and over and over again that the state is acting in a way it was designed for this purpose, it's doing this thing, and at the same time, when you actually look at the way that it actually operates, it's nothing like that. And that was like really the main point of the anatomy of the state, which was kind of interesting. But it's like what I thought was really cool about it, because it's like, okay, whatever, like I understand now. It's like, how do we solve it? And his emphasis was on sort of soldier centric solutions. I thought that was a really cool, like, I thought there was like a yogic lens to that I really, really liked, where it was like, we were talking about the conscription. It's like, how can you argue that you're conscribing people for their own self-defense? Like, no, like people would do that themselves. If I want to protect myself, how is you throwing me in jail protecting me and my family? That doesn't make any sense. Right.
Right.
But
Huh.
even to pull on that thread a little bit, it's like you can tell the nature of the state when, how does it punish those that aggress against the state versus those that aggress against others? What's the punishment for assaulting a cop versus assaulting someone else? What's the punishment for like stealing, stealing from the state versus stealing from someone else? Like, what are, like, you'll often realize, or killing someone in the state versus killing someone not. So you start to realize that the ego feeling, that ego sense that we talked about, it starts on the individual basis, but the next level outside the family is communal action. So if you're in an office with the people around you, whether that's a company or it's a department in the state or the state itself, however you want to look at it, you're gonna have that ego sense and that will reflect your own like kind of sense. There's a relationship between there, and so as soon as that starts to happen, and like, besides the fact that we live in like a competitive base, like we think competitiveness is supreme, like, besides all that, then that state is going to like act that way. It's going to have its own interests and work to expand what it does and expand what it has, basically. And one of the main functions that it does that and has done that has been through war making, or war gaming, as they like to call it over the years.
War gaming.
War gaming. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a game.
Yeah. Like it's a game.
Right,
Like,
right even there, like the wording, like as if words are powerful, right? War gaming, like it is a game. Like,
and they're upset,
we're
and
gonna play this
this, like,
game.
to bring this back like a little bit to the present day, it's like, think about the beef. You guys aren't playing the same games. Like, you guys are not dressing up in a uniform. You're like mothers and fathers in your own villages dressed like everybody else. Wait a minute, this isn't how we want to play the game. You guys are using, I'm gonna get into, you guys are using each other as humans. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be out and separate and, firing back at us to make this a part of our game. Like, this is supposed to be a game.
Yeah, there were all these rules, right? That used to be like these rules of war or these agreed upon things. And then when somebody stepped out of that, we got so offended.
You're like, I'm not
Dare
trying.
you?
I'm not trying to play.
How we play?
Yeah, this is not a game to us. This is not a game. This is like, and I think it is so. But I think that there's that element on the individual level, and I think awareness is the main way that we can see it, because luckily, like, we can make individual actions that can shift, but then we, allegedly live in a free market slash democracy where, given our awareness, we can see different things. And what I've realized primarily is that when you shift your awareness personally, you start to see what you're looking for. And if you're looking for a different type of government or a different type of thing that is in alignment with, like, if you think you're gonna, if your awareness is at the point where you're like, in order to have peace in the world, we need to be the dominant force and kill everybody. Like, I just need to be the biggest and baddest. Like, that level of awareness will get you at a position where there's always conflict. But if there's able to be like, okay, well, what if our government, we know that it's going to have its own interests. What if its interest was for the benefit of the world, and all its actions represented that, and all, like, through obvious ways, like not through back channel ways, like legitimately. How would that manifest? How would that look? And the way that the couple things that Murray Rothbard landed on, he was like, one way that you know that people are serious about it is if there is going to be a draft, if there is a draft and there is a total war, then no one should be able to make more than the lowest paid soldier. Right. So if you're going to be a banker here, then you need to get paid $30 an hour. You know, if you're all of us, if that's how it's going to be and it needs to be that necessary, then
That would be amazing.
you know, and then he's like, or okay, cool. No wargaming practices thousands of miles off the shore of the continental United States. Like you can't just do, this was written in 1936. So you can't do wargaming activities off the coast of Japan. You know, like that's going to be threatening to them. Like, you know, and like, you know, in this particular
And then you wonder why they're reacting.
yeah, you wonder why that's happening. Can we pause this for 1 second? I want to just real quick.
Okay, we're back. Oh, I said okay, and Henson jumped up. It's so funny how predictable we are and how dogs like totally know everything. So I realize that I say okay to Presence every time I'm about ready to do something. And he knows that means we're about ready to do something. So every time I say okay now, he's like, what? Where are we going? What are we doing?
We're gonna
It's
get
time.
into it.
And I'm like, ugh, I'm so predictable. I had no idea that I had this habit.
I get that. Like they pay attention to literally every single little thing you do. It's like Kimber won't do something. She's very much like a physical person. So like if she won't do move or anything until I do a certain gesture, and then she's like,
And they know the gesture,
know.
right? That you repeat this gesture and the gesture means something, even though in my brain I was not aware at all. There's a funny thing where like I can go to like start getting dressed, and then it's not until I put my pants on that Henson gets off the bed. Like he knows until my pants go on, like
Yeah,
that does not mean anything's happening. Like mom could get dressed, but it means we're not going anywhere. We're not.
literally,
Once the pants come out, then we can take it seriously and we know there's action happening.
absolutely, yeah. It's like no socks. We're not doing nothing. I know, yeah. He didn't have his shoes on. We're not even moving at all. No
That's
jacket
right.
if it's cold, please. But okay, so we were talking a little bit about like some of those ideas about like if it is true, let's like actually reflect that like if it is true that this is our total annihilation's on the line, like we got to give it all, then we got to give everything we can and really show people that like that this is respected. It's funny, actually that wasn't even in Murray. Was that in Murray Rothbard? That actually might have been in War's a Racket, actually, where they referenced that, where that was one of his advices, like, you know, how do you like limit this like wargaming? Like how do you limit the profit? How do you, and I think on the personal level, like it's pretty much kind of the same idea where it's I'm not gonna solicit or have someone else really do the suffering on my behalf. You know, is there's that element
Yeah.
of where there's, and I think that it's like extremely important to realize where sometimes, you know, we want to outsource or separate ourselves from like the suffering that we're actually inducing. And that's why like his second advice was like all the bankers, all the heads of industry, they've got to be conscripted. You know, like first and foremost, all the people that are advocating for any type of violence, any type of war, those people need to be conscripted. So that if that's the case, if you really feel that way. And I just thought it was a beautiful thing where it's like kind of just like really be consistent. If these things are actually true, and he's like, you wonder how much more war there would be then if all the people that would benefit from it, like, you know, financially primarily, had to be involved in the conflict directly, at least for some period of time.
It's interesting how many of these like books, like, I mean, we read a lot of books on this stuff. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, Lex Friedman, and I was listening to the one he did with Jeffrey Wasserman, and they were talking about China,
Mm-hmm.
Xi Jinping,
Yeah.
how he had referenced listening to some books like 1984.
Yeah.
Can't remember whether he had read Brave New World, but I think so. But like, it's interesting that like for all these years, people have always been writing these books about this idea of an anatomy of the state. I didn't realize it was that old, that people have been thinking about these things, and then also how so many of them are coming to fruition and the ways that they're coming to fruition, and then also how whether consciously or subconsciously, it's going to affect how governments operate and the way, because there's influence, right? The things that we put into our mind create influence. And so if we're going back to even like this, what we started about with the different parts of the mind and how we filter through stuff, sometimes there's misconception in the way we filter. We're given information and we make a false assumption about it. So the fact that there's these people writing about these things and people are reading these books still, and then it's influencing the way that our governments operate. And I mean, I'm not really sure I would like anybody to be reading 1984, Brave New World, who is a leader in some sort of government. What any world leaders reading those books?
And it's so crazy. It's so interesting you say that, because that book is like, if you went to an Ivy League school, you probably read that book. Or
Well, don't we have to read it in high school?
I mean, like, well, not all high school. They made it a choice for us. It was like if you were in and I think that's another thing that's happened. I wonder if that's like what you realize is like kind of like changing the education system a little bit.
Maybe. I mean, I grew up in Yogaville and went to yoga school, and we had to read it. You had to read both of those.
Wow. Yeah.
New World and 1984.
Yeah, and I think
I wonder why they thought it was important to read those books.
Yeah, you're like, are you?
The Yoga Sutras, I'm not really sure, but I guess because it was literature and it was considered great literature. But again, I'm also like,
I mean, what is it really? I mean, kind of bringing it back to what we were saying, that might be evidence of, kind of that uncleanliness on a large scale, where he's trying to wrestle out like, okay, what are the things that would justify, what are like the belief systems that would justify even this type of government even existing, like the Leviathan? Like, if you want to have like this state of total control over itself, over all of its citizens and all the thing, like, is that based on love? Is that based on mercy? Is that based on compassion? Or is that based on
liberty and justice for all?
Yeah. Is that based on liberty and justice for all? I don't think
one nation under God.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what people are realizing, is that like, okay, wait a minute, like there's so many little elements of this that are actually happening right now, that but they, you might feel powerless against it, but I think it's certainly true that like, all the state, all of these things are just made up of its people, and like the people in the state, all of us outside the state, all of us, we rub off on each other. Like each one's effort and each one's attitude impacts the whole. And that like even the effort of trying to think more positive thoughts, like we're saying, have a cleaner mind, be more in alignment with quote unquote right action.
Well, this whole idea too, Quentin, of like how we put stuff into our minds, right? So what you're putting into your mind can create more ripples, right? It can create more disturbances in the mind. And so, and then that disturbance can affect the way that we operate and the way that we then go out into the world and behave or act. So there is this whole thing of like, what should you be putting into your mind? And how is that going to affect the way that you operate? And so, I mean, I struggle with this one a lot. And maybe it's a little bit, I mean, I was raised obviously in an ashram, and I don't particularly think we're a cult, but I do think there were certain things that we did that felt a little controlled. And so they were very careful about the media that we consumed as teenagers. So I wonder, like, I struggle with that conflict because I really love, I love Jack Reacher. I love John Wick. I love really, crazy movies, right?
Yeah.
And I love reading books, and I love all that stuff. We just went and saw Mission Impossible. That was so fun. I love that stuff. And then I wonder kind of how is that influencing, do I think it's making me a better You mean, is it making my mind calmer? Probably not, but it's really enjoyable and it's fun. So the question is then, I guess, is it doing harm? I mean, it does good. It's fun. It's entertainment. It's enjoyable. I'm probably not really hurting anybody by going to see that movie. I don't know. But when you're looking back at like the action of it, like what is that? But then also like, will my mind be more disturbed because I watched the movie or not? Like, those are questions that I often look at, and then I kind of wonder if sometimes if it's actually like the pure teachings of yoga or it's the interpretations of the people who
Yeah.
interpreted the teachings of yoga that kind of influence the way that I think about these things. And so that also makes it very interesting. So yeah, I don't really.
Yeah, I lost you
I'm not
for a second or two.
entirely sure about that.
Should have good
I
service.
think my internet just went out a little bit, so I'm not sure Quentin actually heard that whole
Oh,
montage.
okay. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I was going for like maybe like 15 seconds. You're frozen for a second.
Yeah. So I don't know whose audio or whether the audio just overlapped each other there, but we couldn't hear each other for a second. But yeah, what I was basically saying is sometimes I'm not sure whether it's the interpretations of the people who interpreted the yoga teachings that told us this was the way it was, or whether that's actually like a thing. But certainly trying to, again, as we're talking about consuming something like 1984 Brave New World, is that doing any benefit by creating like more ripples in your mind? Is it creating more benefit for me? Am I a more peaceful person because I went and watched John Wick? I don't know.
You know, I think, okay, so there's a podcast I was listening to. It's called Freaky Friday. It was between Cam Newton and I'm forgetting his name, but it was someone who's in the Nation of Islam. It was really, really interesting. And what you just said that made me like think of that was you're like, okay, trying to figure out what to consume, what not to consume. And what came up in the conversation was, he was like, the first greatest blessing that basically God ever given you is life itself. The second best blessing is guidance. So like, good guidance, actual good, like productive guidance on how to like live this life, how not to use the imagination, this mind in a way that'll be like destructive. And I think that's like a huge element of this, because a lot of the times these books or movies, like they might be interesting in some way, but they still impart guidance on how to respond to certain situations. There's a protagonist that you're meant to like kind of hop into their shoes, or there's certain things like that. So really interesting that they like 1984 and certain books that are about like the state and the interaction between its people, and like bringing it back to like this idea of right consumption, even in the beginning of the conversation with sweets, like, what to consume, what not to consume. And I think like where I land on it is the way you can assess a movie and to see like if it's beneficial or if you would recommend it for further watch, for repetition, would be like, does this encourage me to be more selfish or more selfless toward and how am I identifying myself? Am I identifying myself like from all perspectives or just from one point of view? And there are some things that I've watched where it's like, like I love John Wick, I love the action, for example, but it glamorizes like murdering others, right? But kind of in self-defense, you could say, but it's really like they killed a dog, he went out and cut all of them. Like, that's kind of revenge. Like, that's not. Yeah,
It was like this kind of like bizarre or like ridiculous scenario, but not so far from like what we
that's what happens in real life.
engage in on a daily basis. Like the
Yeah.
ridiculousness of our choices of like, you insulted me and now I'm going to road rage gets me that way, right? Like you cut me off, so I want to shoot you.
At
That's
a
a
time
little
like this?
extreme, people.
Yeah. So that I was thinking about that. So like 1984, I would say Star Wars to me falls under this category. You can make the argument, okay, well, this might be an example given what this author is trying to put out there that tells a story of a state that's dominated by fear, or acting in their and acting in their own self-interest. How can you tell, right? Like, what would be some signs? And I was watching Star Wars, and there's this new series they have called Andor, and it emphasizes only just civilian life, and unlike life in the ranks of being in the Empire. And it's like, it emphasizes how all of their departments run off of fear and shame, and how like the people that are in the ISB, which is like FBI/CIA type thing, internal services, like, you know, they go to jail if they act poorly. They would rather die than have like something unfortunate happen on one of their missions. But they're ultimately up against the forces of like love and compassion, so they always fail. And through their, like, because they keep failing, they keep pushing like harder and harder and harder. And it's like, there's a little monologue right at the end of the last episode, and it's like, a freedom fighter said it earlier on in a previous episode, like in the first season, and it's basically like, it just takes constant effort to maintain it. It's so unnatural to have this empire. It's always leaking. There's something always wrong, and it takes so much effort. And there's like, that's something that I can tell internally too. It's like, do I feel like it's just taking so much energy, do I feel like there's just so much tension and so much pain in my day-to-day life, in my day-to-day interactions? Am I consumed by anxiety and fear and all these things? And I think that the more that you're aware of that within yourself and within your own life, and the more that you practice, a mantra or stealing the mind, and then realizing how the mind responds to certain things, it allows you to like at least experience the government's actions, or your state's actions, or corporations' actions differently. And you can say, okay, those actions might be rooted in that with which I'm trying to change within myself. And I think that,
Quentin, it has to be very like
Yeah.
individual.
100%.
What's going to work for you is not going to work for somebody else. What's going to invoke that for you is not going to invoke it in somebody else. And I think about that a lot when like thinking about, like, one person might read 1984 and have one reaction to it, and someone else, like someone might read it and have extreme fear, and someone else might read it and find it inspiring to take action or to do something. And so I think that's also why, my brother, he's in a goth band, and for years people were like, how can you sing that depressing music? Like, that's so depressing. And he's like, not for me. That's not what it evokes in me. So it's okay if that evokes it in you, and you don't have to listen to it.
Yeah.
So I wonder, like, for some people, the violence they would see on film could have a certain reaction. Like, it would, some people are very sensitive to watching that kind of violence on film. Other people, it doesn't have the same reaction. And so therefore, I think that's why we have to be so mindful also of like censorship and how we censor things, because just because it affects you a certain way doesn't mean it's going to affect others like that.
So true.
And so then it being really individual of like, I do know, like, okay, so if I watch Ted Lasso, I obviously feel uplifted and positive. Another interesting example is like the difference between, I like Mr. Beast. I think what he's doing is really fun. I enjoy watching his videos. It's cool. It's whatever. I like the interaction with him and his friends, but it doesn't uplift me as much as when I'm watching Yes Theory. Like, when I watch Yes Theory, I literally am smiling. I feel really good. Like, the interactions between all the guys is like so sweet. The way they interact with other people, there's a sweetness to it that really resonates with me. It may not resonate with somebody else. Like, obviously more people resonate with Mr. Beast than they do with Yes Theory right now. They're both kind of doing a similar sort of, concept of these adventures. But definitely, like, when I watch Mr. Beast, it's kind of entertainment and it's fun. When I watch Yes Theory, I literally feel like it evokes like a total feeling in me
100%.
where I feel uplifted after I watch an episode, or, whatever they call them on YouTube.
Upliftment. I like that. I think, like, emphasizing like the nectar of upliftment and also entertainment too is like entertainment's cool.
Well, and
I
do we have to be so serious about it all the time? Like, does every single thing have to be leading towards, like, like Swami Satchidananda used to watch movies, or he'd watch the Weather Channel a lot. He really liked the Weather Channel. He liked all the excitement of the weather. Um, my dad said sometimes he'd come in and he'd just be pacing back and forth in front of the TV with the Weather Channel on.
that just sounds like someone who's born in the 19 teens. Like, and like, can you believe it? Like, that's cool. Yeah, and it's
But I
so
think
cool.
about like the entertainment factor, and then I think about like, okay, so we have like these ideas of what's sacred and what's not sacred.
Mm.
So I was raised. This is probably why I like John Wick. Actually, I'm having a full circle moment here. I
Do
was
that here.
raised
We do that
like
here.
there are these Hindu comic books where they tell the stories of the Mahabharata and Ramayana, and they're incredibly violent. Like, I mean, like blood spouting out of heads chopped off, and like, I mean, really, really violent imagery. The Mahabharata and the Ramayana, when you read the stories, like they are full of a lot of juicy, good, dramatic stories.
Literally.
And it's not unusual. I mean, there's even stories of like, one person who prayed didn't want to be in a female body because they just really wanted to be a warrior, and they couldn't be a warrior. And so they go through all these like extreme things that they do so then they can like be reborn or like recreated as like a male body. I mean, there's all the things of like life, and there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of demons that, come in. There's a lot of chopping
Yeah.
off of body parts. Like a lot of violent chopping off of body parts. But when I look back, I'm like, oh, right. When I was like, 6, 7 years old, this is what we would read during like reading time. Like, so after lunch, they'd always give us rest time because, Swami Satchidananda would always say that after you eat, you should lay on your left side to digest your food. So you're supposed to lay on your left side with your right leg up, your right knee up. And so after lunch, they would lay us all down and say, okay, go get your book or your whatever. And we'd pick up these comic books, right, that somehow we had in school.
Literally, people's heads are getting chopped off. Compared to John Wick, it's like, yeah, it's like,
It's kind of actually similar. And certainly as a 50-something, like almost 53-year-old woman, John Wick, I can intellectualize what's happening with John Wick. I don't know as a 7-year-old I was able to intellectualize it. I was probably just like, oh.
I would say, yeah. I mean, you're talking to a kid who played Halo and Call of Duty, and I'm in the era of video games where, like, yeah, like I remember Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Never forget. I was 12. I know it was rated M, but who cares? And all of us were. And in that, there was a scene where you're in the airport and you commit a terror attack. Like you're paid. I think you're like it's like a fake terrorist attack, basically. Like it's a real people actually die, but like it's not like you're posing as someone else. And it's literally like there's a little thing that they put on the screen, and it goes. It's like this scene in particular is gonna be pretty violent. Like, do you want to play? Yes or no? And it's like, what do you mean?
Sorry.
I'm like, I've already played up until this point. Like, there's already been a bunch of violence. I've already been practicing my aim, shooting things, and it's literally just a scene. Like, you get a machine gun, a whole bunch of people get a machine guns, and you just kill a bunch of people in the airport. You walk from one end to another, and anybody that's around my age probably like remembers that as a huge part of like that was like there's a huge debate about it, but at the time I was thinking to myself like, oh, whatever, like I'm so positive this has no impact on me, like whatever. Halo, same thing, but different. There's a lot of aliens you kill, but
So now that you're looking back, do you think it had an influence? I mean, obviously
oh
you
yeah,
think
oh my
terrorist.
goodness. I think all, I mean, to me personally, yeah, it's like it's all about the mind. Wherever your mind is, you are. So if I'm in Master Chief's body and I'm headshotting all these people, like that's me for that moment, right? That's
How does that affect you now as an adult, though, Quentin? How is it like?
well, because you
changed?
never forget. I think you like okay, I'll put it this way. I have a firm belief in a benevolent force that guides my life, right? So there have been obstacles placed in my way and obstacles removed. So I would say for video games, for example, like the there's so many things. Like how important is your life from 10 to 15? Like how important is your development? Like if you're staying up all night, several hours, especially in the summer, pretty much every day spending hours and hours and hours and hours playing this game, it's gonna have both cons and negatives. So for me, I'm gonna start with the negatives and I'm gonna end on the pros. I would say the negatives, it's just like life. You already don't really understand how valuable life is, but especially like as a young boy, and especially in a war culture, all these things coupled together, it's like, okay, like you don't think that you can kill people easily, but killing people isn't that big of a deal because it's like you're actually trying to kill people faster and more efficiently when you play video games. That's the mindset. So you then naturally, whenever you see anything related to that in the news, you have that same energy. Like, well, those are the bad guys. We should just be killing them. Like, this isn't that complicated. Especially when you're young, you don't have that depth yet. So
I'm sorry, I have a question because
yes.
obviously I grew up in a different time, and so we didn't have these video games when I was young. When you see it on the news, is there any part of you that like wants to make it more efficient? Like if I was doing that, I would have blah blah blah.
No, because this is how. Okay, so this is the point of shooting games. The point of shooting games is to kill as many people and get killed as less as possible. So that's efficiency, right? And then in the middle there's assisting, as in helping others kill people. So that's like what we do, and like there's no coincidence. So it's like when you play video games all the time like this, you're like I'm saying, these like Halo came out in 2001, I think, but Halo 3 came out in like 2009 or like around that time. So like a lot of I'm at my age, but there's a lot of people that were at military age then. So it's like they have this completely different idea of what war is. Now, I want to emphasize a couple more things. So in Call of Duty specifically, the way that you get rewarded by having many, many kills. So it's called a kill streak perk. Okay. So you live. What I'm saying is in one respawn or in one life, before you get killed again, how many kills can you acquire? Okay. So depending on the game, because the games are in different time periods, but Modern Warfare 2 is like meant to be current time warfare. So if you got like 5 kills or you get 3 kills, you get like a UAV, which means now you have radar. You can tell where the enemies are, which makes it easier for you to kill more. Then after you have UAV, let's say you have 5 kills now, you get you get air support. So all the people that the airplane kills now add on to your kills plus the kills that you're physically getting. Then like at a certain point, I'm skipping ahead probably, but it's like chopper gunner. Chopper gunner is like the helicopter where you're off the side of the helicopter, like the machine gun turret, plus like the missiles that the helicopter can shoot. What's dope about that is that you're controlling it, so you're choosing where it goes. Then there's the AC-130. These are all real things, right? The AC-130 is the high up air support where you're like looking through like an ultraviolet, not ultraviolet, like black and white thing where all the people are white hot and you're just picking them off, and you have several different guns that you can choose, like a longer missile, whatever. Then there's the nuke. So if you get 25 kills without dying, then you can nuke. You can just essentially call a nuke and it ends the whole game. So the goal of the game, the goal of it is that. So that's really what's exciting in each individual game. So when you let's say real life example, when we were fighting ISIS, Obama had this thing where he's like, we're fighting guys with like trucks. Like ISIS is like, they're like in pickup trucks, like with guns. And so to me, I was like, well, we have AC-130s, we have chopper gunners, we have F-18s, we have all these things that even it might not be the exact same thing, but we've seen what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
So that's like back then. So that was back then. How it impacts me now. Okay, so what I meant by the guiding force though in my life is, yeah, for a while I was heavily addicted, but like as certain things started to come into my life that I feel like were more important and beneficial, it fell away. That's one of the ways that I knew for me personally that it wasn't benefiting my current circumstance, because it would draw me inside and pull me there. And my conscience would be like, well, this is the last game. Then, this is the last game. Okay, now this is the last game. Okay, now this is the last game. And next thing you know, it's 5 games later. Cool. So there is that But what I think was the hugest benefit for me was it developed my concentration like incredibly, like very, very strongly, to where I usually say to myself, I was like, oh, if I can play 5 hours of video games, I can do 3 hours of homework, like easy peasy. Like compared to these things, this is nothing, because you're constantly, and I was good. So like, I feel like if you were bad, you would just be like, whatever. But like you notice like the kids that are better, like the more you're like kind of locked in and you're. But it developed in me like this power of deduction and creativity. Like how you get good at a game is through being creative. But I would say the strongest thing for me is it really solidified evidence in the intuition. I would say the reason why kids are really, really good is because they're using that sixth sense. So when I would be most on top of my game is when I'm like, I don't see them coming around that corner, but I'm just gonna throw a grenade in that direction. Lo and behold, right as I throw the grenade, it explodes, and now their shields are down, or you know what I'm saying? Or like yeah, like there's stuff like that where it's like, and it helped me. I have most of my memories of me having really good games, or when I would just let go and just be and operate on allowing my urges and my intellect to kind of work in unison. So then now, like nowadays, it's like I know that there's power in that. I know that it's true. I know that, yeah, I know that there's a faculty to the mind that can kind of see around the corner and like in some way, shape, or form, and it can be trained in a way, and grown. It's like a muscle. So the concentration, the intuition, and the assertiveness, like like I'm saying, your mind is there. So like me personally, I like to like Halo 3 to me is like probably still the best game. I don't play it, but it was just an incredible game because it had just enough complexity. It was like the perfect level of complexity and simplicity. And there's this league called Major League Gaming, MLG, and like it's like the most complicated, but it's like the most technical, right? In order to be good at MLG, you have to be extremely technical. But like I said, the best kids, that they were the ones that seen around the corner, they knew what was coming, and then you get so good at a certain point, you play so much that now you almost just have like an intuitive sense where people are gonna be. That's like when you get to the next level. So all of those things, me being able to get good at a thing over consistent effort really gave me confidence to address other things in my life with that same attitude. So construction and martial arts, those two things to me are very similar to the military, if anything. But it helped inform me. It helped like push me forward. And I'm emphasizing the game, but the main, I would say, that's from the game, like from just me playing the game by myself. But a huge element of it is the social element, right? I'm talking to my homies. We're having a great time. We're laughing, making fun of each other. We're doing all sorts of stuff. A lot of people that still play games to this day, they have a whole friend group that they probably don't even know that they just play games with, right? So
My nephew stays up all night in virtual reality.
In virtual reality, so it does connect some.
And his friends are like in the other, I don't know, they're in other countries, and that's why he plays a lot at night.
Yeah,
because they're awake, and so they try to find times that they're all awake. My other nephew, he has friends in Singapore, so we were just discussing. He just moved back to the U.S., so we were just discussing how they were going to match up their times so they could do it. But there is like this social aspect. I always had really bad motion sickness, so I've never been able to play those first-person games like that. So really, even watching them, I don't actually know that much about them because even watching someone else play them makes me feel ill.
Yeah.
And certainly I was never able to play them myself. And so it's so fascinating to me how people immerse themselves in them, and also the skill set that you're learning that I do feel like in some ways I lost out on because I don't have a certain skill set. I was listening to an interview with Elon Musk, and he was saying that he actually uses the games to gauge where his mind is at each day, where he will go and he'll play for a little bit, and that can kind of help him understand like what problem he's going to work on that day, or how he could operate that day. And so it's just like a really quick gauge for him because he can see how fast his reaction is, like, and how he is in the game. And that's incredible that you could just jump on there for like an hour in the morning and be like, oh, my mind's on it, I better tackle a really big problem, because otherwise you're just sort of trusting your feeling but that's like actually something measurable where he can go in and be like, yeah, I am on it today. Let's take the most difficult problem that I have to figure out and let me work on that today because I know my mind is really sharp. Or he's like, didn't sleep enough, didn't do enough, like had something weird happen. Today's not the day for that. And he can gauge it from playing a video game.
Yeah, well,
That's crazy.
I was gonna say because they like to play they like to play shooter games too. And what's dope about shooting games that I also didn't mention was, so you're talking to your friends joking, but even if you're not, you're still collaborating. So there's like this yearning or this like deep need for collaborative human effort, I think, along with connection that strengthens it. So like Elon Musk, he's not only just measuring how sharp he is as an individual at executing whatever task it is, but also how he's supporting or hurting his teammates. And to me, that's like the whole thing. That's the whole thing where it's like, and you can tell a lot about a person by how they play. So like for me personally, like the way I love to play, I don't try to get kills. I try to get assists. So I just try to inflict damage. I don't need to be in the front doing all that kind of stuff. I just want to help my homies get kills. If I get kills in the process, like it is what it is. That's cool. But then you have your homie who's like, you're like, stay back. He's like, no, I can take them all on my, I can take them all on my own. But it gives you, yeah, we just love connection and cooperation. There's something about it, like and I think that's really the main thing about sports
And military.
and in military.
That's why we join the military, right? Because
Yeah.
of connection.
And I think kind of to bring it home when we think about like clean mind, clean awareness. I kind of cut you off in the middle of your answer there, but to me that felt like emphasizing, because like what does that mean? What is positive, right? Everybody feels like they have their own moral code and what works for them doesn't work for others. But I would say the things that when you're doing them, you know that you need to restrict yourself or limit yourself from doing those things. Like that could be a hint. Or after you do a certain activity, whatever it is, like, do you experience, gotta use the right words here because it could be wrong on another level, but do you experience something unpleasant, like uniquely unpleasant to you, right? That's like made for you, right? That might seem unrelated to that event, but it's happening in a way that it's still like in time correlated. I think like a lot of the times, like we don't do big evil things. We do like little minor things every now and then that can help steer. So it's like, okay, I play video games for a while. Cool. Now how's the next day? Or is my mind completely rippled? Or am I in more tension than I had been before? Like how am I
And
operating?
it goes back to eating the sugar too. It's like a similar thing, right? Like it all has an effect.
Yeah.
So yeah, some people like you can eat the sugar and you can have the candy and you're fine. Other times you notice it the next morning in meditation
You'll
where
know.
you're like, ooh, I ate something or I did something yesterday. So the question is also, how does it affect your mind? And that's why meditation is actually a really cool touch point, sort of like, I guess maybe sometimes I use meditation similar to like Elon choosing video games. Because in the meditation, I also get a little touch point of like, all right, what am I dealing with today? And I'm like, wow, my mind is so rowdy. Oh, right. I watched too much Netflix. We binge watched something yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really feeling the effects of it. So same with like the video games, or like, I also notice like I'm not a big video game person, but obviously I play games on my phone. And I notice if I'm really stressed, oh my God, I'll sit there for an hour. They have this like game and it's so stupid. Like it literally has no purpose, but it is so good for calming my nervous system. It's this one where, you like set up pizza restaurants or fast food restaurants and you have a little guy on the screen and you just move the guy around and he goes and he like picks up food and then he sets up ovens. And it's literally like the most useless game. It's not making me smarter. It's
Yeah.
not making me more calm. Like nothing. It's
Yeah.
doing nothing for me except for the fact that I find it is the most effective for calming down my nervous system when I'm overly stressed. It's really, and it's a little tactile. I find like games that have some like Candy Crush or something that has a tactile reaction in my hands can really do a great job in soothing my nervous system when it gets overstimulated. And so I know I'm not well when I can sit and play that game. If I'm well and I'm doing well, I cannot tolerate that game. I cannot sit there and play that dumb pizza game.
Yeah,
Like, that's
literally. I got too much
ridiculous. Like,
going
who
on.
wants to waste their life playing this stupid pizza game? Like, but if I'm not well and I'm not balanced, that game I could play for 8 hours because it's soothing and it's doing something, and the way that's like reprogramming my brain to calm back down in this like dumb little pizza thing. It's really fascinating how video games can also, again, gauge where you're at. That one doesn't give me any skills. There's no skill I think I learn in that game.
No, that's a great point. And
In Halo, you're learning some skills. Like, even your hand-eye coordination gets better. I'm not really even sure that game does that for me, but it is really good at soothing my nervous system for some reason.
absolutely, yeah. It's like, to me, it's like the competitive edge is or at any of that, or just any of these games. Like, there's nothing wrong with experiencing them. It's just like we say, all things in moderation. Being aware of what's happening while it's happening. Being aware of just, okay, I'm going to spend another 30 minutes doing this. Then what would I be giving up? What could I be doing? What else could I be doing? And I think what I've focused on, like me, is like chess and like card games. They kind of give me like that real, they give it that experience that we're talking about. In chess, you're always sharpening each other, but also if you're playing like spades, like a card game that I love so much, we'll talk about that for a while. You have a partner, and this is another way to still scratch that itch, brings you towards other people in real life. And
We play Five Crowns almost every single night with my parents.
oh, that's beautiful.
Like almost every night we
My
go
mom
up and play
bought
Five
5 crowns.
Crowns.
I haven't opened it up yet. I need to. Yeah,
You
yeah.
have to?
So
That's so
it's like, so that spirit's there, and I think that what we're saying is like, hey, we can be in competition with other states. We can be in competition with other civilizations, but it does not need to be destructive to them. You can't consume others. You can't, like, I mean, you can, but that way of doing things is not beneficial to that society. Like, you get the most out of things when they're alive. That's just how it is. I think we think that killing things is a solution to our problems, but in reality, cooperating with things, and a joyful, and you can let yourself be wild. You can let yourself do all the things that humans do, but with the stated intention and the hard intention to benefit one another ultimately at the end of the day. So
it's such an interesting thing because you're talking about, I'm trying to think about like how this applies, because I'm always looking at like, okay, how does the macrocosm apply to the microcosm of me? And I think about, like, for me, it's ants. I don't really kill bugs at all. I try to take them outside. I don't, I've been vegetarian my whole life. So like nonviolence, that kind of nonviolence, that ahimsa of like not killing something, is so ingrained in me. I don't know how to get rid of an ant they're so little and they can be so annoying. It is very hard to transport ant by ant outside, and then they just seem to keep coming.
yeah.
And so I also look at like layers of stuff. Like, you can drive yourself crazy and become like neurotic about things. And that's where I swing out of balance the other way. And so when I think about like what you're saying about everything's better alive, I was just thinking about ants. I was sitting here trying to be like, okay, let me ponder that. Like, is there some scenario where those ants are better alive in my house? I don't feel like that is a truth right now for me. But I'm curious about, like, there's lots of things. Like, I don't mind spiders being in my home. I can move them out. We have a little conversation. But ants don't seem to listen either. Like, I feel like I have a nice communication with a lot of insects, but ants are not one of them. And so there's just like two things that and then mosquitoes, I accidentally kill mosquitoes. And I really don't intentionally do it. It's like this jerk reaction. And then I kind of feel bad because I'm like, wow, I didn't even like control myself enough to not just accidentally smack that mosquito. So I wonder, like, thinking about like other planets, and as we're looking at other species and traveling to other places, and obviously Elon has this very strong need for interplanetary
Yeah,
existence.
travel. After I destroy this planet, no, like, well, you need another place to go.
Maybe, although weirdly, I was talking about this last night with my sister, my nephew, and I was saying, it's funny because he's also trying to fix this planet, right? He's really doing a lot of work to try to make
100%.
this planet more sustainable. But at the same time, he's trying to like get off the planet and says it's really important that we be on other planets, which I think is interesting. Well, we were talking about other space companies and how the other space companies are not maybe doing as much to try to make this planet livable while they're trying to travel to other planets. Whereas I do feel like he's at least trying to.
So the other countries are the other companies are actually actively destroying the planet. Actually, a lot of the other companies that have rocket technology and this type of power are like literally not really doing anything constructive other than saying that they might be able to get you from here to there faster, and that
Right.
and even I love that you brought that up. I think it just starts on the individual basis. It's like, okay, what do you personally, when you look at yourself, it's like we all feel called to do something, to put our skills and our interests and our talents at use. Some of it might be in the realm of industry, and then also some of it might be in the realm of just service, just helping others around us. But whatever that is, like, go in that direction, right? If you are an engineer and you really love engineering and designing and you want to do something like, but you're working for you, but you are involved in something that doesn't really align with your true interests and your in this way, like, especially if what you're contributing to is actually destructive in some way, shape, or form that's tangible, and pull yourself out of that, right? You can that skill that you have, that talent that you have, isn't because isn't only valuable within that system, right? It's not only valuable in that system of competition through like these means of consuming others, but your talent could be seen as more valuable through a collaborative effort. I would even add the next level above that would be a devotional level, right? Like just love for the people around you, like not just an intellectual thing, but it really is fully felt that, these really are all my people. This really is all my planet. Like I want to love it like completely and entirely. And
I love what you're saying about that being a really individual thing too, Quentin.
100%.
Because yeah, Elon has this vision that's really big. And that's not necessarily right for everyone. Just like, some performer like Beyonce and Jay-Z, they had a vision for what their purpose was on this planet. That's big. But I think we start to think like success or fame or money are the things that we should be all chasing after or all striving for. If that is for you, great. That's for you. That's fine. But like, you don't have to. And just even like with your job, like it is okay. I was just talking to my friend Prasad about this. I was saying, there's nothing wrong with you just waking up in the morning and seeing the sunrise and going to bed at night and seeing the sunset and being like, that was a very successful, wonderful day.
Yeah.
That was great. That was all I needed to do.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do anything else. Like just being on the planet, enjoying nature, appreciating everything around us. That is just as valuable as doing something really big and huge and being a disruptor or changing or influencing the whole world or making $1 billion. But it's very individual because I don't want to also shame the people who have a lot of drive and ambition in those areas.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I really do think like, for whatever reason, Elon, this was put in his heart for a reason. And he is just following this calling that is so strong for him. My calling is going to be much different. Everybody's calling, someone else's calling might be, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a surgeon. That's their calling. Everybody has their own calling. And I guess, it just comes back to like not judging others, realizing that it's our own journey and not trying to create absolutes of like, this is the way it has to be. Whereas again, with the makeup of our mind that we started with, the mind wants to create absolutes. The mind wants to create scenarios. The mind wants to analyze. That booty wants to analyze everything and come up with like, you know, we want to make rights and wrongs, and the humkara wants to decide this is the only way to do it because this is the right way to do it.
Man.
Whereas really it's just, no, that's just what your mind is telling you. And that's the way your mind just processed information that came to you. It doesn't mean that it's right. Just because you think it doesn't make it true.
It's so true.
So I think that's really like, and I guess, you know, for those of you who are listening, like having that be your inner guide of like, what feels good? What inspires me to get up in the morning? And what is my calling? And some of that is going to be through your quote unquote work or career or job. Some of that is going to be the side part. Some of you, that is like connecting with people. Some people, like, you're a great connector. Like, you had a 5-hour conversation with your friend. I do not have 5-hour conversations with people. Like, our conversations are probably the longest conversations I have. So I could feel bad and be like, whoa, I really wish I was like Quentin and I had 5-hour conversations with people. Or I could be like, that's just what he's good at. I'm good at something else. Like, something else is resonating for me. And then finding that, just like I think a bouquet of flowers is more beautiful when you have diversity. I have 2 bouquets at my house right now. And one is like this beautiful, diverse, all these different colors and plants and all this stuff. And the other one is just my hydrangeas from my yard. The hydrangeas are beautiful.
I was gonna say hydrangeas are beautiful, but still.
And I think it would be even more beautiful if there was some sort of contrast in the arrangement, right? Because when I look at this other arrangement, that's all these beautiful textures and flowers and colors and everything. That's really beautiful. So I think that diversity that we create is what makes it beautiful. And really kind of, again, going back to what inspired us to do this OneAnswer Yoga podcast was like, you and I are very diverse in many ways. I mean, for 2 people sitting in a room together, just 2 people, we create a lot of diversity. And that's what makes it so interesting. Like, I love picking at your mind and understanding where your mind and your experience came from. And that's pretty cool.
Same here.
Yeah. Makes it really fun.
Well,
on that note.
Yeah, on that note, I think that's all I've really got. I think I would want to leave just like one little message. It's just like, you know, just we keep saying it in a bunch of different ways. Follow your heart. It helps. It's a little bit easier to follow your heart when your mind is cleaner, right? And I think
a little easier to hear.
A little easier to hear. And there's little tips and tricks, breathing slowly, whether it's journaling, maybe it's one of the things we even mentioned today, like some music that might be calming, or like what you consider calming. All of these things count. It's not like you have to always confront things so directly. You can try to distill the mind, and magic can happen. So as you're like sort of reflecting over like the major world and all of the things that are going on and all the things that are wrong and what's going to happen, like that same tool can be applied. Still the mind. Okay, I feel motivated to do something. What can I do that comes from a place of selflessness? If I want to protest, I can't do it with the same energy that I'm protesting against. I've got to meet it at a different place. So yeah.
Beautiful. I think that says it all, Quentin.
Cool. All right. Well, stay tuned.
Till next time.
Yeah. Till next time.
Yeah.
Peace.